Yeah, go ahead.
Cool. I'm going to go ahead and start recording. We'll get started here in another minute or two.
Sounds good.
DJ, good morning. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Morning, guys. How you guys doing?
Good, brother.
One second.
Morning, Mr. Crawmer.
Hey, good morning.
Mr. John Crawmer, good morning, my man.
Hey, good morning, Paul Lingo. Thanks for the invite. Happy to be able to be here and join this morning forum with the IECRM.
All right, well, we appreciate you being with us, my man. We're going to get started here in just another moment. We got some people still chiming in. It's right at, I think right now we're right at about 7:30. We'll wait another minute or two. We are recording, John. All right, we're almost, once we get to 20, come on, let's keep our hopes up. We'll get to 20 here in just a moment, and then we'll start jamming. Come on, one more. Let's root for one more. Let's be positive thinking for one more. Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning. This is our regularly scheduled IECRM member forum. Normally, we hold a safety forum each month when it comes to certain safety topics that industry, contractors, maybe there's updates with OSHA, things like that. We like to gather as many people as we can to talk about some of those issues. Because of the current COVID pandemic, we have had safety discussions and kind of updates as far as industry status when it comes to the pandemic weekly. Today, we are going to talk about employee wellness and mental health. We've got some awesome SMEs on this morning with Troy and John. And they're going to go through and talk about some of the things that hopefully we can be forward thinking on and try and recognize in the workplace when it comes to our people, you know, how are they doing? What are some resources that are available, and different things that we can identify to address, you know, the employee wellness issues. And so I'm asking everybody, if you can, jump into the chat. I know that a lot of people are on their phones and things like that. It's really important that we take good notes and that we get each of your questions answered if you have them. So jump into the chat. We'll be jumping back and forth to make sure questions are answered. We will also have a communication sent out later on today on today's meeting, so that if we share any resources such as web links or documents, we can, or contact information, we can make sure that those are in the communications and sent out to you for reference. So good morning once again. I do believe, Holly, are you on with us this morning? I believe
I'm here, Paul. I'm here.
Okay, and Holly, I just wanted to thank Holly so much. Holly will be on the backdrop taking the notes and gathering the information. And so if you have any questions for her, just put it in the chat. And having said that, is Marilyn on with us this morning? Maybe not yet. Well, Marilyn Stansberry is our CEO, and she might have a few things she wants to talk about when she joins on a little bit later. But we've got a great topic today with some great SMEs, and so I'm going to get out of the way and let this presentation start, and I'm going to introduce you to Mr. Troy Bridges from Duro Electric.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate you having me come on and present this topic. So this is one of the things that I find extremely important. It hits close to home, as I'm sure it will with a lot of you. And it's kind of been my approach to safety for the last, I don't know, at least 10 plus years. I've been doing safety in one form or another for over 20 years now, but I learned a long time ago that when you're looking at safety, I mean, you really got to look at the big picture and look at total worker health versus just, physical protection and physical health. And the mental health piece of things, especially right now with the way the world is and everything that's going on, it's extremely important to at least know what to look for and have some resources available for both yourself and for your workforce. So my goal with this presentation is hopefully to give us a little better understanding and maybe even a different perspective on our approach to safety and workplace wellness. And I'm gonna go through a little bit with the COVID issues and some of the pressures and anxieties that we're seeing, then with some of the social bias issues that are going on as well. And then kind of get into the resource piece of it. This is by no means an all-inclusive presentation, but just kind of an overview, like I said, to hopefully get us thinking and look at things from a different perspective. Because when it comes to mental wellness and how people react, how people feel, you just don't know what people are going through. I mean, we all react differently to situations. We all have different feelings and viewpoints. And there's just a lot of things that we don't know. And with social media right now, it's blowing up. It's going crazy. There's a lot of hate out there. There's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of cultural and social bias that hopefully we can change, right? Because this world needs some change right now. John, did you have anything you wanted to chime in on or introduce?
You're doing great, Troy. Thanks. And yeah, totally support the notion of total worker health. And this indeed is an important aspect to consider as we are safety and health leaders or leaders for our organizations to assure that our workers are cared for and comforted and not creating a greater risk while out on the job.
I mean, that's a great point, John. And that's part of the reason I look at total health and the worker overall, because when you have pressures and anxieties and other things going on outside of the workplace, it really does impact the workplace because that individual is not going to be fully there, fully committed. They could make poor or rash decisions based on emotions, put themselves at risk, put others at risk. And like I say, it's just something that we do need to pay attention to and look at within our organization. So let's start off with some concerns. And I know we've been beating this to death, and this is all we ever hear about right now. And I don't want to get into the weeds on this. I just kind of want to look at it from a health and wellness perspective and kind of ask some questions maybe and get you thinking about, what does this really truly mean? But we have never experienced something like this, at least in the recent past, this coronavirus. And regardless of where you stand on the issue, whether you feel that it is important and we do need to take steps and pay attention, and protect ourselves and those people that are at high risk, or if you think it's just totally blown out of proportion, and you don't agree with anything going on, the fact of the matter is, there is a virus out there, and it is causing issues for some individuals. And I think that's part of the problem, or part of the challenge, is just the uncertainty. I'm not going to lie, I'm at risk myself. My wife is at high risk with our health issues, and this is something we are taking seriously. But I'm happy to finally be doing things at work that aren't strictly all coronavirus related. I know that's all I did for those first couple months. I spent 5 weeks working at home before I came back in the office. But that's all I did all day long for those first couple months, was just deal with, coronavirus, trying to educate myself, educating my workforce. And it's nice being able to start doing some other stuff. But the uncertainty piece of it, I think, has been a challenge for a lot of us. This is something new. It is a new threat. I don't know where you guys are within your organizations, but I know within our organization, this isn't necessarily something we were prepared for. You have your basic emergency response program to physical threats or natural disaster type of threats, but how many of you actually thought about this kind of threat? Something that wasn't easily seen and defensible. And I know that's been a challenge for a lot of us. And again, with some individuals, why should they care? They may not be in that at-risk population. They may be one of those individuals that doesn't get sick very easily, and it's that not me type of syndrome. I'm not going to get sick. Why should I care? And so there's been a lot of that going around. And again, regardless of where you stand on the fence with this, I think we do need to address it. We do need to talk about it. And the more we can educate ourselves and our workforce, the more we can help cut off some of that uncertainty and some of that anxiety with this new challenge that we're facing. I know it's been difficult with these government regulations and these orders and these public health orders, because it seems to change every day, every week. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm tired of watching press conferences because it's like, it's not always new information, but at the same time, it's continually changing. And you just don't know where to go sometimes. And that can be a challenge. We started off with the safe at home, then the safer at home. Now we're moving in to protect our neighbors, and the difference between essential businesses and non-essential businesses. And there's just so much information out there, and that alone can cause stress and anxiety. And then one of the other things I found kind of interesting is I think we need to have somebody that is strictly responsible for naming things and putting words out there, because what they're doing right now, whoever's putting this stuff out, is adding to the confusion. The social distancing, when really we really mean physical distancing, and social distancing kind of makes you think of more isolation and not being able to talk to anybody, and that's caused a lot of anxiety and stress for people. We're humans. We want a connection with other individuals. That's part of who we are. That's what makes us human, that social aspect. And I know there's been a lot of concerns with myself, my family, my workforce, when we don't have that social interaction that we used to. So part of what I've been trying to put out there is, it's not necessarily social distancing, but physical distancing. Maintain that barrier between yourself and the other individual. Doesn't mean you can't talk, you can't interact, you can't socialize. So these are just some thoughts and some things that have come up during this time that I'm trying to put out to our workforce. I'm trying to help educate other people on. Because as with anything, the more you know about something, the better you can put a plan together, the better you can prepare yourself, prepare others. So make sure you're educated, not just with coronavirus, but with everything else that's going on, and try to understand everybody else's viewpoints and keep an open mind with a lot of this. Because again, you just don't know what's going on with other people and what they're going through. So this is just some of the external pressures that I've noticed, whether it's within myself, within our organization, or just what I've seen being posted on social media. And this is where I've been trying to direct a lot of my focus and time and effort in to address some of these issues and hopefully put people at ease with additional resources or information. As with any global threat, there's always a concern to the economy and the market, finances and investments. I don't know if anybody plays the stock market or dabbles in that, but a lot of ups and downs and uncertainty, and finances are a big point of stress for a lot of people, not necessarily a lot you can do about it yourself, but, just take time to get information from reputable sources. Try and avoid pushing the social fear. That don't put out misinformation. If you're going to share something on social media, make sure that it is accurate. Try and do some fact checking before you just post it out there. That's how a lot of this stuff starts. People go half-cocked and they don't have all the information. They don't have the right information. And it creates panic and it creates anxiety. So if you are going to share stuff, make sure you're getting it from reputable sources and people who are experts in the field. Just because your cousin said the stock market's going to tank and the economy's going to crash, and start investing in something else, don't keep passing that along. Make sure you're getting it from the experts who really know and understand, because we don't want to share and spread those fears and anxieties. Other things that we've seen are the impacts to businesses. I am extremely grateful that our industry, construction, has been deemed essential, and we have been able to continue to work and do our jobs. Paul and I were talking a little bit before we started. Duro is super busy right now. I don't know about the rest of you, but we've got more work than we've got people. We've been having to bring on temps and supplement our manpower because of the work that we have. And I am super grateful for that, and I know our workforce is too, but there's other businesses that haven't been so lucky and been impacted. And that can be a concern and a challenge, whether it's within the family circle or within your network of friends, being able to offer support to those individuals, just be there to listen and do what you can. Hopefully things are on the mend, and we're going to be able to help keep some of these businesses going. But I know a lot of them have had to close their doors because of this impact. It's changed the way that we do work too. I know there's some memes going out there with all these Zoom meetings, and looking at all these little video screens. It's kind of like celebrity squares, right? You got all these different people in all these different boxes. But it's offered us an opportunity to do more without having to physically be in the room with each other. I know our president has really taken a different stance on his approach to meetings, and he made a comment one day that he's never going to go to another meeting in person again because he likes being able to sit in front of his computer and interact with people. And, you don't have the drive time and the exposure of being in a vehicle. He's able to get more done because he doesn't have to sit in a car and drive an hour, to get to that meeting. And it has, at least from our viewpoint, it has made us more efficient. You know, we're getting better at utilizing the technology that we have. I've been trying to push this for a long time now, you know. If you got a question and need some help, FaceTime me, you know, text me, send me a picture, whatever. We have the technology, let's utilize it. And now that we're kind of being forced to, it really is changing the way that we do our work. And I'm kind of excited about it. If anything, I think this is one of the biggest positive changes I've seen is we are able to be, I think, a little bit more efficient in how we do things because we can't always physically be there. And so we're getting better at planning. We're getting better at making sure that everything is done up front, and we've got good drawings. We've got the right materials. We got the right people. And we are able to do things more remotely and manage our time better. So I think that's been a positive outcome. You know, going down this list, some of the other things, you know, that go with the business impact and the economy, you know, loss of incomes, you know, questions on job security. You know, even though we've been deemed an essential business, I'm not gonna lie, it's been in the back of my mind. You know, what if things change? I don't know if our family could survive without me working, you know, for a couple weeks, let alone a couple months. And if things were to change, you know, there's always that safety tends to be one of the first things that gets cut sometimes, you know, and because we're not a profit center typically. And so, you know, business owners, you know, may make the decision that this is an unnecessary department and, you know, might be out of a job, you know, and that is a concern. But with us and our workforce being essential and us continuing to work, there's also the other side of that. You know, we may feel guilt because we are working when our friends or our family are not. I know I've had conversations with some of my staff that they do feel guilty that they're working and their roommates, you know, have been out of work for 2 months or longer, you know, and they're having to carry the burden of paying the rent and the bills because they're the only ones bringing in an income right now, you know, and they feel bad. So not only is there the mental aspect of being unemployed, there's also that mental aspect of being employed and watching everybody else go without a job. And then, as I mentioned, you know, we got the isolation piece of it. You know, let's promote the physical distancing, not necessarily the social distancing. You know, Paul made the comment, it's nice to see everybody. You know, although we can't physically be together, it is nice to see faces pop up on these screens and hear voices and just have that human interaction. So just because we can't physically be together doesn't mean we have to isolate ourselves completely. One of the big things I saw up front and a lot of the frustrations with this was not being able to do those external things that, you know, were enjoyable for us, whether it was hiking or getting out and fishing or golfing or, you know, whatever other hobbies and interests that we had, you know, and we were isolated more to our homes. And I know that's caused some stress and anxiety among couples and marriages. You know, we love spending time with our family, but sometimes spending all your time can be just as frustrating as no time. You know, you're not used to being together that much. You're not able to get out and do the things that you want to do and spend that time either by yourself or with your friends or your circle of peers. And, you know, that causes extra stress. Talking to a few of my friends, I'll say I'm kind of happy that my son graduated a couple years ago, but, you know, I do have friends that have kids that are in school, and, you know, they've been extremely frustrated with having to try and, you know, be the teacher and do this homeschool thing with them. I remember when it came to helping our son with homework, back in sixth grade, I think sixth grade was the worst. This math is a lot different than the math, that I grew up with. And I wasn't able to help him with his homework because I didn't understand the way they were teaching it. And that's been a huge frustration for a lot of people because they don't know the curriculum. They don't know the principles of teaching. They don't know how to communicate these messages except the way we were taught. And it's different now than the way we were when we grew up. And then the other piece of it, what do I do if I get sick, or what do I do if somebody else gets sick? That's been one of the big discussions in my household, with both my wife and I being the vulnerable populations, and with me being at work, especially up front, one of her biggest concerns was getting sick, even with the cold or flu, because typically, the kid and I, we get sick, we're down and feeling yucky for a few days, and then we feel better. But when she gets it, it usually turns into bronchitis or even pneumonia. Last year when she got the flu, we spent a couple days in the hospital because it turned to pneumonia on her. And with everything that was going on, that was one of her biggest fears, is getting sick again. Because now if we go to the hospital, she had to be there by herself. And she didn't want to be sick in a hospital by herself because I wasn't going to be able to be there with her. And we had many discussions at night, talking about that. And that was a big stressor for me and for her. So just keep some of these in mind. I mean, if you got some others, feel free and throw that in on the chat. But these are things that I think we need to be conscious of. Again, you don't know what people are going through. You don't know where their mental state is. And so if you see people acting strange, not their normal behavior, just kind of isolated out there on the job when they're normally a talkative type of person, anything out of the ordinary, that's an opportunity to kind of do a check-in and see how they're doing, what's going on, and seeing where we as an organization can help and what resources we might have available to help ease some of their frustrations or their concerns and anxieties. I mean, this has been a tough time for a lot of people. I haven't talked to a single individual that's not feeling some form of stress and anxiety because of everything going on. So like I say, just keep these in mind as you're going through your day and you're interacting, whether it's online or in person with others, and trying to keep an open mind and be aware that, they may be going through some things that you don't know about. So any other pressures or stresses you guys want to add to that, or that you've seen or experienced?
Troy, listening to you, I can tell you one of the biggest impacts, as the training director over at IEC is the interaction with your staff, on a personal or face-to-face level, as well as, being a large apprenticeship chapter. I'm really used to shaking 200 hands a day and feeling the pulse of a school at night, whether it's good or bad, right? I mean, it's in a work day, you teeter back and forth between a lot of different things, but one of those things is that personal interaction. It is that pulse of knowing there's life going on in the school and stuff like that. And so I didn't realize that so I've really learned a little bit about myself, throughout this whole thing, because I didn't realize that was such an integral part of my mental health, having that pulse. And within the first couple of, let's say the first 2 weeks of having to make, the changes due to the protocols and the distancing and making sure that we minimize the risk of spread, right? I realized, I was like, wow, I have an empty school right now. I would have 500 students in it. You know what I mean? I'm not attending face-to-face, say, networking events and IECRM, say, energy industry initiative events, you know, where in the past I always looked at that as a lot of work, but now that it's not there, I just go, wow, you know, that's really part of who I am and what really drew me into what I do, you know what I mean, as far as the job that I have. So I can tell you it does take an impact, and we're all individuals, you know, each of us are different. And when our head hits the pillow at night, it's our own thoughts and our own worries and our own struggles and planning and reflection that hits that pillow. And it's a little different for everybody. So as a leader, we really have to open ourselves up and be somebody that your team can come to talk things through with. It's something that in this kind of instance, you know, when we're dealing with stuff that we've never had to deal with before, you almost have to try and be people's good friend and support in that way more than not more than, but at least equal to, you know, what you have to do professionally each day. You know, you have to really try and open up the personal side and say, hey, you know, the things that worry me are not necessarily the things that worry you. You know, we're all different, and because of that, I just want to encourage everyone that leads a team to really be open to listening to your staff or your people, because they're the ones at the end of the day that's making it happen for you. You know what I mean? We wouldn't be leaders in our industry if we didn't have a support team, and making sure that their mental wealth and their issues or concerns are heard is vitally important. So I've felt it. That's kind of my story about how I feel about it all. It's I just missed y'all. You know what I mean? I miss the handshake. I miss the things good and bad that we can sit down and either rejoice on or come up with strategic plannings to fix. You know, so that's kind of my story. I just really miss y'all, and I feel really blessed, because you're right. You know, being considered essential in our industry, we have seen some impacts, you know, when it comes to certain dynamics of work that the industry is in. But ultimately, we've been pretty good at staying steady. So I want to encourage anyone out there that's got a roommate or somebody out there that's out of work and don't know what to do. You tell them to get a hold of this guy, Paul Lingo, and I will get them into this awesome thing called the electrical industry, and we will start a new pathway for them. And I think that that's important too. I think we need to, and this is why I don't even watch the news anymore. It's because let's encourage our people that things are going to be okay. Let's encourage people that there is a strategic plan moving forward to ensure that our team has support. So being supported in this time is just really important. And that's all I really have to say.
No, thanks for that.
I wanted to make a comment as well, and that is, I really appreciate Marilyn asking, you know, the question, how are you really, really? And it's, you know, because if it goes beyond the surface, and the reason it goes beyond the surface is incredible. I want to share a story with you about a mountain biking buddy of mine that, you know, I only saw that aspect of his life, the mountain biking piece, and he was always just a really, really hard person, and but, you know, loved life, and you would absolutely, no one would suspect that he would kill himself, and that's exactly what he did. And it's, you know, it's asking, I think I could have been a better friend in asking, you know, how are you really, really, and seeing what was going on, because I was only seeing this aspect of his life, but it turns out that this aspect of his life was just overwhelming for him. So, you know, you have an excellent point, Troy, about digging in and really, really asking, and that's where I tie back to Marilyn's comment about how are you really, really. So, you know, if I ask, I really want to know.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, you just don't know what other people are going through and how they perceive things, and Couple slides later, we talk about risk factors and warning signs. Yeah, I mean, just, again, keep an open mind and be available and be willing to listen. Don't talk, just shut up, just listen. You know, and sometimes you'll hear things you may not want to hear, but you know, it's good to get it out for them, and it's good for you to hear it, and you know, hopefully together we can help get them help. So in the interest of time, you know, there's a lot of good things we could keep going on this, but I want to keep us moving here. With everything going on with COVID and the world being upside down, now we've got other things that are surfacing and other pressures, and just to add to the stress and the confusion, you know, now we've got all this social bias stuff going on, Black Lives Matter. I'm not going to get into this. I don't want to talk politics. I don't want to talk, you know, religions or anything else. But this is something that we do have to be aware of, and we do have to start addressing, regardless of what side of the fence that you sit on and how you view this. We've got to talk about it. We've got to address it from an organizational standpoint. It's something we do need to be aware of. There's a lot of good articles that are out there. I'll try and send some over to you, Paul, later that I've seen. You know, from an organizational standpoint, you know, what do you do and how do you handle this? Do you not say anything at all? Do you make a stance? And what does that look like? But we've got to be aware that there are social injustices out there. There are inequalities. And then, you know, at a personal level, I mean, where do you fit into that? You know, what side of the fence are you on? Yeah, I will say one of my stresses lately has been having to be on social media and having to listen to the news. So I am up to date and I am educated so I can communicate messages to my workforce. And that's stressful for me because I want to shut it off. You know, I don't want to get in there and I don't want to hear all these conversations. And I would like to take a step back and just not deal with that. But given my role and how I approach things, I have to do that to keep myself informed, keep my workplace informed. My wife was able to step back a little bit and not get into COVID stuff a whole lot. And that really helped her mental health piece of it. But now with all this social stuff going on and these prejudices, she's blowing up her social media. And it's just kind of interesting, you know, the different dynamics within our family and how that's being handled. You know, but again, we need to keep an open mind and be able to look at things from a different viewpoint, be able to willing to listen. I will say I've had a lot of chats in the last few weeks with our Director of Human Resources, Johnny Guyton. He is a Black man, and him and I have had a lot of deep conversations to help me understand, you know, what it may be like in looking at things from his viewpoint. I know there's a lot of things out there. It's not his role or his job to educate me as a white man, but he is willing to share some of his stories and his history and how he grew up, and it has given me a different perspective on things in life in general. And those conversations have been very beneficial and enlightening. So be willing to listen to all different groups and all different backgrounds. I will say one of the positive things that we're moving forward with is, you know, we are going to put together a diversity and inclusion committee made up of anybody who wants to be a part of it. Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, LBGT, whatever, doesn't matter. We're going to open it up to everybody who wants to be a part of it. And the group, kind of their role as a committee is going to be helping to educate the rest of the workforce and the community, you know, on their viewpoint, on their history, on their culture. We've talked about when we're able to start having more meetings in person, supporting local businesses of minority groups, looking at different cultural aspects and sharing that information. From a business standpoint, one of my sells to management with this was it's also a great recruiting tool for us. Being able to tap into some of these community resources through our workforce that can help maybe bring fresh blood into it. A lot of our workers are active in the community with groups and associations that are important to them, that represent their culture, and being able to take our message to them that, hey, construction and electrical is a viable field. We've got a lot of benefits. We've been considered essential workers, all that stuff. And it just will be a good recruiting opportunity for us to reach that audience that we may not have thought about in the past. So again, I don't want to get into this because we can go down a rabbit hole with this one, but just be open and willing to look at things from a different perspective, and ask for help, ask for their input, ask for their participation. And I think the more that we can do that, the better we're going to be, as an organization and as an individual. So that's all I got on that. Anybody has anything else you want to share, feel free. So we've looked at a lot of the stresses and the external pressures, and so what does that look like and how does that impact people? Stress plays an important role in our physical health. It's amazing how stress can physically impact you. I remember when I went through my divorce, that stress of going through that time physically made me ill and put me in bed for 2 weeks. I couldn't do anything. I could hardly move. My body just kind of shut down because of that stress of going through that divorce process. I wasn't prepared for it. It was a little unexpected for me, and being able to reach out to our EAP that we had at work and talking with counselors and other individuals, kind of helped get me through it. But again, you don't know what people are going through. You don't know the stresses that they have. But stress can manifest itself physically and cause you to have health issues. Loneliness, isolation can lead to depression, anxiety, anger, a lot of other ways it manifests itself emotionally. And then kind of to what was just brought up, it can lead to suicidal thoughts. It starts usually with depression and anxiety and can manifest from there. But suicide rates are up because of everything that's going on, and so we do need to be aware. And that's one thing I can't stress enough is just be aware, visually, take notice of what's going on around you, how people are acting, how people are moving, what they're saying, how they're saying it. We need to take our blinders off and we need to open our field of vision and just look at what's going on around us and how people are acting and behaving. Because there are a lot of indicators that can help identify these suicidal tendencies before they manifest into suicidal action. So real quick, what is the problem, when it comes to suicide? And these numbers from last year, I mean, like I say, with everything going on in the world right now, they are escalated a little bit. And there's a lot of great information out there on a lot of these websites. I just pulled the facts for Colorado specifically. But on average, one person every 7 hours takes their life. And that's kind of crazy. When you look at suicide rates in Colorado, It's the 7th leading cause of death overall. But if you look at, kind of my demographic, it's in the top 5 for those individuals from their mid-20s to their mid-40s, especially white males, mid-level management. In construction, we have the highest rates of suicide than anyone else, which is scary. But I mean, think about normally the pressures that we have in the construction industry. Everything's a fast track job. We do more in less time. We do more with less manpower. We've got added pressures from developers and business owners, investors, general contractors to get the job done. You're getting, all the stresses from the workforce itself. You're getting stresses from the office, from all the other external players. It's a lot. The one job I really wouldn't want to have within my organization is that foreman or superintendent level. I don't know how those guys do it. I really don't. I wouldn't want their job because they have so much they have to worry about and so much that they have to do. It's amazing they get through the day sometimes. My hat's off to those individuals. So suicide, it is an issue, and it is something we do need to think about. We do need to pay attention to. So some of the risk factors when it comes to suicide, a lot of times it is, but not always, related to some underlying mental illness or mental disorder. Bipolar, schizophrenia, anxiety. There are a lot of times underlying mental disorders that these individuals have and may not be aware of, but not always, not always. Alcohol and substance abuse is kind of one of the symptoms, if you will. They don't know how to cope. They don't know how to deal with those stresses, so they resort to alcohol and drugs as a way out or as a relief mechanism, but that just leads to additional complications and health issues. There could be some history of abuse or trauma that, again, we may not be aware of, or physical illness. With everything going on, like I say, we already talked about all those added pressures and stresses, that just compound what we had prior to all of this. And some people just don't know how to handle and cope with that. The social piece of it is a big part. Just like Paul said, it's tough sometimes not being able to shake hands, not being able to see other people, feel other people, touch other people. We are human beings, and that is part of who we are and what makes us who we are, that physical aspect of it. And when we lose that, it just leads and adds to the depression and the anxiety. So I'm not going to go through this whole list, but just be aware that if you notice any of these risk factors or you're aware of it, maybe start asking some more questions. Just like Dave said, how are you doing really, really? Get a little deeper. Don't just stick with the idle chit chat. Don't be afraid to ask some tough questions. A lot of times people want you to ask the tough questions, but nobody does. So don't be afraid to ask those. Warning signs. The more I've educated myself and the more I've made myself aware of these issues, the more I see these warning signs. They're there and they're present. We just don't always recognize them. So again, being able to kind of step back, do a little observation, be more receptive and open to things, you'll start to see some of these warning signs. Now, just because they exhibit warning signs doesn't mean they're going to kill themselves. There's a lot of other things that go into this that we could discuss at a later time. But if you're noticing some of these signs, again, that's an opportunity for you to jump in and to start asking questions. Now, obviously, if they're blatant about talking about taking their life or killing themselves, ding, 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 that's a red flag right there. You know, make sure you address it. Even if it appears to be joking and a passing by comment, you know, most people don't make those comments if they don't have an underlying desire. I mean, it's not just something we joke about, you know, and so if they're blatantly talking about it, we need to put the brakes on them. We need to listen and we need to address it. You know, or if they're talking about ways they would kill themselves, again, that's not normal conversation. You know, and so those they're just voicing out loud what their thoughts are and trying to plan it in their head. You know, what may be the best way to get this done. Hopelessness, trapped, you know, isolation, any talk about those types of things, you know, again, are red flags. Talk about being a burden to other. You know, that's one of the big things when it comes to suicide is that perceived burdensomeness. So just because you don't see it, in their mind, they perceive themselves as being a burden. You know, it doesn't matter what you say, that's their perception. And you have to take that for what it is. It's their thought, it's their attitude, their belief. They believe that deep down inside, if they took their life, if they weren't here anymore, that your life would be better. You know, and that's one of the big pieces of suicide is that perceived burdensomeness. You know, one of the things that we noticed at my last company when I was at RK, and this kind of started our mental wellness and suicide prevention efforts, was that second to the last one there. We had a gentleman come into the shop, one of our welders, one day, and he was normally an outgoing type of person, you know, and very social. Comes in one morning and, you know, is kind of quiet and just kind of keeping to himself. And then towards the end of the day, he starts handing his tools out to people and giving his tools away. And for those of you who have done construction or done some sort of trade, your tools are your lifeblood. I mean, you don't give your tools away. I mean, you never want to let anybody borrow it because you don't want them to break it or lose it. I mean, your tools are yours. They're very personal to us. And for an individual to just start giving their tools away should be a huge red flag for you that something's going on and something's not right. And that's what this individual did. And then we heard the next day that he ended up taking his life that night. It's just their way of kind of saying goodbye and trying to let go and sever some of those connections before they make the decision to take their life. So again, I can't stress this enough. Just be open, be aware, pay attention to what's going on. You see things that aren't normal for their behavior, that should be a flag for you that something's going on. Again, it may not be suicidal tendency, but there's something going on there that they're kind of reaching out for help. So just be aware of these warning signs. And like I said, one of the biggest things, we can't ignore this subject. We can't ignore the signs and symptoms. And I know it's difficult, especially in today's society. We're so afraid of getting sued or saying the wrong things and offending somebody. But if you're seeing these signs, we have to start the conversation. And sometimes we need to be blunt about it, you know, simply asking that individual, hey, I've noticed that, you know, you're a little off today and you're exhibiting X, Y behavior, whatever. Flat out ask them, are you thinking about taking your life? You know, and I know that just doesn't feel right for a lot of people, especially if you're in a safety or an HR role. But sometimes we do have to be blunt about it. And I know personally, I have had these conversations with individuals, and I know personally that I have saved people's lives because I was willing to ask the question, to start the conversation. one of the happiest and personally the most emotionally, I don't know what the word I'm looking for. I get choked up when I talk about it a little bit. But when I'd left RK and came over to Duro, a couple weeks after my start here, I got a message from one of the HR individuals at Duro that just wanted to pass along a message to me. And she said that one of my electricians had come back asking where I was because he wanted to personally thank me for saving his life. And I was in tears reading that, and like I said, I still get choked up about it because I distinctly remember the conversations that we had together. And it started off with him kind of being curious about, you know, suicide and our company policies and, you know, our trainings and what we were doing. And he wanted to be a part of that because he was concerned about his mother. And as we continued to have conversations and I opened up and I was available and there to listen, it kind of morphed into, he was reaching out not for his mother, but for himself. And, you know, we sat down together, we made some phone calls together. And I know that I saved his life because I was there and willing to listen. And I can't tell you how that made me feel and how that's impacted my life moving forward. Suicide's probably touched most of us in one form or another, whether it's, you know, personally within our own immediate family or friends and family members that we know, or even, you know, out in the broader world. You know, they're with celebrities and other people taking their lives. It is a big deal and it is an issue. And like I say, we need to be aware and take the time to stop and listen and start looking for these risk factors and these warning signs. And like I say, it may be uncomfortable and it may feel weird, but sometimes we do have to have the conversations or direct them to the people who are willing to have those conversations. Some resources, because this is one of the biggest challenges I see. People want to start down this path and create a, you know, suicide prevention program, a mental wellness program, but they're not sure where to go. They're not sure what resources are available. So here's just some examples of some local ones. I got some national ones here on later slides. You know, start internally within your own organization. If you have an EAP, an employee assistance program, call them up. You know, talk to those people on the other end of the line and see what it's like to make that call, what services they offer, how they handle a call when it comes in. The more you know about your EAP, the better you can communicate those resources. I have incorporated our EAP into our new hire orientation, and I talk about it with everybody. We made up wallet cards talking about the services with the phone number on it that I issue to everybody when they start with us. I've personally used EAPs in the past for addiction issues and counseling issues, and I was very grateful that that resource was available to me. And I also communicate that, you know, our EAP isn't just counseling. I mean, that's a big part of it, but they offer a lot of other resources as well, whether it's financial help, legal help, just help with meeting the day-to-day things, you know, like getting groceries or transportation issues or what have you. You know, so be familiar with what your EAP is and what services is offer. And like I said, the more you know about that, the better you can communicate it. I also carry those wallet cards around with me. And again, if I see any of those warning signs or triggers, I start getting little bells going off in my head, you know, I'll pull that individual aside, you know, start asking some questions, you know, and boom, I flip out that card. Hey, here's a phone number, or better yet, hey, here's a phone number, let's call together. You know, I'm here to help you, I'm here to support you. with the COVID stuff and everything that's going on, Colorado developed their own kind of crisis line for that, the Colorado 211. And that's been a big help for a lot of people to get questions answered and help find resources. The Colorado Suicide Prevention Line, the text to talk. Colorado Crisis Services offers a lot of great help as well. The Depression Center over at CU Anschutz, their Working Minds program, I've been through actually twice. That's how much I enjoyed that information and material. A great program there. So those are just some of the local ones that are available to you, and feel free, like say, print this out, hand this out to your employees. Again, the more you know what's out there and services are there to help, the better you can address some of these issues when you see them. The National Suicide Prevention Line, if you go to their website, you can order free stickers and magnets and handouts, and get on their website, get some stuff ordered. I got magnets all over the office. I put them on our gang boxes, again, just to push the message and get that information out there. One of the other ones that I like is the crisis text line too. So some people don't feel comfortable talking, but there are text options where you just text help or whatever, and there's another person, counselor on the other end of the line that can have a conversation with you via text. So you don't have to physically talk. So that's also a great one there. Some national resources. I know John's put a few of those in the comment section already. But a lot of great resources out there, not just for suicide prevention, but mental health in general. So get out there, check some of these out. Like I say, here's the National Crisis Text Line. And this is for any crisis, not just suicide. I've actually looked into maybe becoming one of these text line counselor individuals myself. I just don't know if I can commit to the time on it right now, but it's a great resource for any kind of crisis. Again, sometimes you may not be in a position where you can talk on the phone, but you can send a quick text. Maybe there's some domestic violence going on, and you can't be seen talking on the phone, but you can send a quick text, let somebody know, hey, I need some help. So great option there. Get on their website, check out their stuff. They've got a good video, kind of walks you through what they do, how they do it. But awesome resource. And then one of my favorites I pass around all the time is Man Therapy. This is a program that started here in Colorado and has gone global. The creative team behind this concept is amazing. They take tough situations like suicide, like mental health and wellness, and they put it in a format that is entertaining and easy to digest, especially for guys. Yeah, and their message is for anybody. It's called Man Therapy because it's geared towards men, but the message goes for any individual. But they have some awesome videos out there, a lot of great resources, posters. Again, you can get on their website and order a bunch of this stuff. But there's one in particular that I enjoy. It's called the breathing exercise. So they have a whole YouTube channel that addresses a lot of this. So if you go to YouTube, type in Man Therapy, click on that breathing video and watch that. That is super entertaining, and I share that with everybody. When I'm walking on the job and I notice somebody stressed out, that's one of my favorite things to do, and I follow this breathing practice all the time myself, and it really does help let out some of the frustrations. I would play it for you, but last time I tried to play it on a conference like this, the sound wasn't coming through, and you really got to hear it. But get on the website, check it out. Man Therapy, great resource. Like I say, it adds humor to serious topics. And they, on their website, they have a 21-point head inspection, little quiz, if you will. So I encourage everybody to get on there and kind of go through that. It just asks a series of questions, and then it kind of helps identify maybe what stage or what issue you're having and directs you to appropriate resources. And if you immediately flag for suicidal tendencies, it stops the quiz and directs you to the National Crisis Line. But great resources on there for PTSD, for suicide, for just anxiety, anger, any of those. Great resource there. And then with that, that's pretty much what I had. Hopefully I gave you some things to think about.
Hey, Troy.
Anyway, yeah.
Hey, let me just interject there. Very, very quickly, this is really good, and it's a very important topic. And speaking from personal experience, I unfortunately lost my one of my family members, my mother, actually, to suicide just in March. But you know, what's important and what I want to add to this, it's a long story, but what I want to add to this is, in addition to reaching out and caring for others, it is also important to care for ourselves, because when we are experiencing a situation where we're trying to help someone, sometimes that stress and burden can carry over to ourselves. So don't forget to eat healthy, exercise, take a walk, listen to your favorite music, you know, do your favorite hobby or something, because all of this can also become a weighty matter for the caregiver too. So just wanted to throw that in there.
That's a really good point, John. You know, we have to check in on our star player as well, right? You know, we have to make sure that we keep ourselves in check in order to, you know, be able to help out with others. It can
Right.
become, you know, yeah, it definitely can become something where you're physically and mentally and emotionally pouring and trying to adjust things outside the, you know, the gate of where we are personally, you know, and get inside your own gate, you go, whoa, it's chaos in here, you know. So
Yeah, that's the dichotomy, isn't it? We care
yeah,
so much for friends, family, loved ones, our workers, and then sometimes it's important to reflect on our own needs as well and keep that balance, I think.
Yeah, great point. So I see a comment there from Emily, said if someone were to individually check in with all employees by phone or video call, would you suggest it be on a mandatory basis or voluntary? You know, I'd say voluntary. If you force issues and force people to talk, sometimes you'll create additional barriers. There's other ways to go about it. And different things that you can do as far as check-ins and having conversations, especially if it is in a collective group environment. You know, so just maybe find a different way to reach out. But if you make it mandatory, you know, just like in the safety field, when we force somebody to do something, they may comply, but we're not going to get to the true issue, right? So that would kind of be my approach, is to look at it on a voluntary basis and just vary the method and the means in which you're communicating. So, for me, I hate talking on the phone anymore. I'd rather have a conversation over text. It's just kind of how I am, you know. So if you're forcing me to talk on the phone, I'll probably be short with you and you know, won't have a good discussion. But you know, I'll open up more if I'm doing it via text or another means. So that's what I would suggest, is just look at different ways to communicate and get your message out. And, you know,
yeah, I want to jump in on that too, Troy. It's a good point, and I think ultimately, big picture, you know, and I can say, and I really want to commend Marilyn Stansberry, because when she came into our organization, she instituted an understanding that at any point you could come in and talk to, say, her, and that's where we kind of came up with how are you really, really? It's not just how are you, but how are you really? You know, that you can come in and you can chat, and regardless of what it is, whether it's stresses at home, whether it's stresses at work, or whatever those stresses are, that if you're feeling, you know, off your normal beat, that you can come in and communicate that. And I think that's really the big picture, is we need to institute an ethic within our workforce that if there is something going on, that your workforce should have the confidence that they can come to somebody and be heard. I don't think it's necessarily people are looking for others to solve problems for them, but I think that individuals are just needing to be heard, to identify that their problems aren't just theirs, that others have those problems, and there is ways around those things. You know, it is the isolation when it comes to some mental illness, where you feel like you're the only person, you know, that's going through something, where if you open up and just had somebody to talk to, maybe you'd realize that there's help out there and there's different perspectives to look at. So big picture, I think just be open to your team, be open to each other, be open to your family, to say, have a conversation with me. Let's laugh. Let's get it figured out. Let's take a different perspective on how you're feeling, and validate those, or whatever that conversation is, but be open at all times to be able to address those things. So thank you, Troy, and thank you, John. I really appreciate it. We are getting kind of close on time. Is there anything else in closing remarks, or anything else we want to talk about, Troy or John?
I'm going to send you a few other resources, Paul, that you can share with the group. There's a video out there that talks about the difference between empathy and sympathy.
Yes.
Which,
David Scott, I believe, wanted to contribute to some information as well. David, do you want to join in? You've had your hand up for a while.
Oh no, I already threw that in there.
Oh, okay. Very, very cool. Thank you. Yeah, so I hope the big picture, everybody took a little bit something out of today's meeting. I hope that you are also, you know, the people who are attending this meeting are doing okay yourselves, you know. So it's a different and difficult time that we're dealing with. Just know that we're all dealing with it, and there's people to reach out and talk to if you need. Okay, so we did share the links in the chat. We will get that out in a communication later on today. Thank you so much on the back end, Holly. John and Troy, anything else in closing you'd like to add?
Good discussion. Thanks for the participation and engagement, and have a great day.
Yeah, thank you, John and Troy. I know you guys are so busy doing your stuff that you do every single day, and thank you for taking time out of your day to talk to the group and share some resources and some forward thinking about, you know, the mental health and how is our team and how are we really. So thank you so much. We can't thank you enough. So
no problem.
any questions from the group before we go?
And I just throw this out there. If anybody wants to talk about putting together a wellness program or suicide prevention program, or needs some training, I will be more than happy to help and provide some of those resources or do that training if you need it. Like I said, this is something that I do feel strongly about and just want to share the message. So feel free and reach out to me, and we can chat at another time and kind of walk through some stuff. But I'm just throwing that out there. That resource, me, is available for you anytime you want.
Awesome. Thank you. And I also wanted to jump into one of the conversation topics that we had was the inclusion and diversity topic. If it's something that anyone's interested in as far as your organization or your company, on some strategies and ways to get involved with the DI type of initiatives, we do have here at IEC Rocky Mountain the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. If it's something that you needed information on or would like to be a part of, let us know and we can see about getting you connected.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Troy. Appreciate you. John, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody else in attendance. It was a great turnout today. I think we had up to close 30 people. So tune in next week. We will have our end of month COVID-19 topics next Wednesday at 7:30. So see you next week, same channel. Thank you all so much.
Hey, Paul, real quick, the next member forum is July 15th.
Oh, that's right. Next week is the holiday. Okay, so July 15th. Thank you so much. And we'll put that in the meeting notes. Thank you so much on that update.
Hey, Paul, I'm on for just a minute.
Hi, Marilyn.
Hi.
Let me remove some people.
Yes, no worries.
Are you 045?
No, I'm the IECRM logo.
Who is 045? 045, we're disconnecting you.
Yep.
And Paul, if you want to stop recording.
Hold on. Yes,
Thank you.
right now.